Live. All right. Hi, friends.
Hello, everybody. We're going to do a little question and response with Pastor Daniel about one of his YouTube Bible studies that he did in years past. It was called How to Read the Bible. We've posted it on our Facebook if you want to go back and watch it later. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the live stream, and Nathan is going to do his best to help us relay those questions to Pastor Daniel in this time. But I have a few questions to get us started. So if you want to just give us a little recap of what that Bible study was, how to read the Bible, and why you felt it was important to lead a Bible study like that.
Yeah, thanks. And it's great to be on the stage with you, Pastor Athena, and get to do things together. I feel so sad that you've been ordained for less than a month, and this is what it's been like. But we're holding you in prayer, and really excited for people to get to know you and Sam, better as time goes on. So the Bible study that we're talking about was called How to Read the Bible, and it was simply that simple question, easily the number one question, or sort of field of questions that I get as a pastor, and I'm sure that you do and you will, is questions revolving whether the Bible is literal or figurative or this or that. And what I said in the video is that the Bible is a library. If you hear nothing else from me, the Bible is a library. Is it literal? Well, yeah, there are parts of it that are absolutely meant to be read literally. Is it figurative? Yes, there's absolutely parts of it that are meant to be read figuratively. Is it poetry? Yes, the Psalms are absolutely meant to be poetry. Is it historical? Yes, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are absolutely trying to be historical, as is Kings and some others. Is it superhero novels? Yes, absolutely. The book of Daniel is a superhero. It's a comic book. There's a story that got kept out of our Christian Bible, or of our Protestant Christian Bible, called Daniel versus Bel the Dragon, right? That is absolutely a superhero story. Just because it didn't make it into our canon, it was originally written that way, where Jesus and his friends, Daniel survives a run-in with lions, and his friends survive being thrown into a furnace. These are superhero stories about the Hebrew people. And the other thing we talked about a lot in the video are the different translations, and that's the question that we get a lot is, which Bible should I be reading? And they all have merit. They all have things that they do, but you need to know what they're doing so that you know that the translation is never word for word. Languages they are not mathematical equations. They do not equal out. The way we talk about being a servant, right, is not the language Paul uses, for instance. Paul says, I am the doulos of Christ, which could mean servant or slave, right? So we have an idea that servanthood is something that you do voluntarily and slave is something you do involuntarily. But they don't have that distinction. So it's never a mathematical equation. So when you're finding a Bible or when you're reading a Bible, it's good to know what they're translating for. And if you know that, then you know better how to read it in our English language. So that's a little bit of an overview. And we also sort of marched through a couple thousand years worth of history, which I'm pretty sure puts people to sleep.
Yeah, but I want to ask you why you spent the time doing that. If it does put people to sleep, why would you take the time at the beginning of this video to march through the history? Why does context matter?
Well, it matters a lot because a lot of our most important books of the Old Testament are edited over time. And they're edited in a new setting. Just like after COVID-19, we will think differently and we'll write differently. And we now have a phrase called social distancing, which if you had said to me a month ago, I would have said, I don't know what that means, right? Those kinds of things happen. So when Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, when they make it after the people have gone into Babylon and then they come back, those things change. Jeremiah, who writes before people go to Babylon and come back, gets changed. Isaiah, which has roots before those things get changed because we see them in a new way. So we're reframing them in our new worldview. And those things absolutely influence history. I mentioned, Daniel in these superhero stories. I know you're a big fan of Esther, right? Mm-hmm. Which is also one of these later stories in a time when the Greeks are running the world. and you're not allowed to talk bad about the Greeks. If you do, they'll kill you. So they just make up countries, right? They say, okay, this isn't about Greece, this is about ancient Assyria. And then we have the story of Esther, which is a historical fiction about what it's like to live in the real world against Greece, but you can't say Greece, so you have to put in those other things. So, context is king on all of those things.
Yeah, awesome. And you talked a little bit, you touched on this in your summary a little bit at the beginning, but what does it mean for us that the Bible is a library, and what does it mean to understand the Bible as literature with, different genres and translation and style?
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important question. We need to know the genre we're reading before we read it. And our early supervisor, Ron Wren, always said this. It was the thing he said probably more than anything else. Just like when you read a newspaper, if you remember how you used to read a newspaper, your brain switches back and forth when you read a newspaper. Okay, this is news. Okay, this is a cartoon. Okay, these are the classifieds. Okay, these are the obituaries. Okay, these are opinions, right? We know when we turn to a new section, okay, this is these comic books are tongue-in-cheek. They're pointed and funny, but these editorials, these are people's opinions. And if we're doing our job when we read, we're separating those things out. And we need to do a better job of reading the Bible with the genre that is there. You find a richness in it. And unfortunately, so many people read the Bible what they call literally, which I would literally question how literal their interpretation is, using the word appropriately. And when you read it that way, you keep the story or the text two-dimensional when you try to read it literally. You're keeping it two-dimensional, where it's so much more fun. Each author is doing a different thing. And if you're trying to read it literally, you're trying to read it black and white, then it'll never be in color, right? You'll never see the nuance or the funny thing. And what really happens, especially in the second half of the Bible, the stories right before Jesus, and then the Gospels, and then the writings of Paul, and then the pastorals after Paul, every time they say something, it has 2, sometimes 3 meanings attached to it. And that is such another level of dimension, right? I mentioned this in the sermon today. John, the gospel writer of John, likes to use the things that the bad guys say. They sometimes say true things that they don't know are actually true, right? So they say it sort of like flippantly, but it's actually true and they don't know it. It's just so deep, and you have to know the genre. You have to understand what you're reading in order for you to get the depth of it.
Yeah, and what about translation? Is there times when our translations let us down?
Absolutely. I mean, I joke in my Bible study almost every Thursday in the fall that there's a lot of job security and how poorly they translate things. It's almost like they do it on purpose. I mean, so many times they do it to make it relevant to their matching you for how you already interpret. They're giving you a feedback loop for yourself, right? So the word that we always talk about is hell. Hell is not a word that's in the Bible. It's English in origin, which the Bible is super not written in. It has elements of the Italian Dante's Inferno to it. That is not a word that shows up in the Bible. So every time they translate Gehenna, and they translate so many different words as hell. Gehenna and Sheol and Hades, which is a Greek notion of afterlife, which is also not an English version of hell or Dante's Italian version of hell. And Sheol is just sort of the land of the dead. And all of those things get mistranslated. And when that happens, it reinforces your own feedback loop. And then you think that you can go around telling people that they're going to hell, which is not there. That's not there in Scripture. There's endless job security for people who can say that.
Yeah. Well, if hell isn't in the Bible, how are we supposed to view eternal life then and eternal torment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not the first to say that hell is on earth, right? I mean, right now, this time is hell for a lot of people. And heaven is also on earth. I don't know that eternity life can't be something that starts when you die. By a definition, infinity is either infinity or it's not, right? And I have a whole podcast dedicated to the idea that eternity life is something that's already there that we tap into. But I think torment is absolutely real. As far as we know, we are the only beings in the entire universe or multiverse that can punish one another. We're the only beings who have invented torture. And we use it a lot. We torture people in all the ways. We ridicule them. We've gotten so good at just easy put-downs, right? Negging people and just being so negative. Our youth today tell us that cyberbullying is somebody spending hours trying to shame us. We are so good at that hell is real. It's just not an eternal torment. The idea that that's what God wants for you, or that that's what you deserve and God can't stop that doesn't make sense. That doesn't jive with things like Romans 8 that says there's nothing that can separate us from the love of God. How could hell and a physical torment like that exist after we die? And the thing I like to say a lot is, none of us chose to be born into this world. What makes us think that we choose to be born in the next? Mm-hmm. That does not match our experience at all. It seems like God would have figured this problem out before God created us. If God were going to love us in spite of ourselves, even though we torture, even though we would put God's own son on a cross, if God could find a way to forgive us, it seems like that would be baked into the recipe. God doesn't just put us in the oven and then say, oh, well, if they burn, they burn. God's got a plan. And why would God create something that half or more than half, if you believe a lot of people, are gonna burn? And that's not the God that I know.
I want to take a moment to see, are there any questions online yet? Not yet. Okay. Not yet. Yeah, if you have questions for Pastor Daniel about how to read the Bible, feel free to post them in the comments section on our YouTube live stream. And I will keep going then. So at the very beginning of your Bible study on YouTube, you also talk about questioning the question. So you kind of touched on this at the beginning, but people will ask, like, well, is it true? Is the Bible true?
Right.
And so what does it mean to question the question as Christians, and why do we have to do that?
Yeah. Right, because a question comes from a state of assumptions, right? In philosophy, they call this the principle of the uniformity of nature. As soon as you make any assertion or question, you're already using several pre-descriptors, right? Several statements that you've already gone in a logical syllogism. If this, if this, if this, if this, if this, then, right? So our questions are always the then. If you remember studying geometry, or if you studied logic in school or something, you know that by the time you get to the therefore or the then, you've already said, if this is true, and this, and this, and this. And those are all presuppositions. So when we offer a question, it is loaded. There are no unloaded questions out there. So we need to think about what our questions are before we say them. So when we say, is the Bible true? We've got a notion of what the Bible is, which I would assume we're talking about the Protestant version of the Bible, and in English, where we've left out the Apocrypha, right? And we've already devalued things like the Book of Wisdom, and several of the Gospels that didn't make it into Scripture. So we're already presupposing what Bible means, and true is also loaded. Does that mean that it's historically verifiable? No. Is language something that can be historically verifiable? No. You know what I mean? We have a dictionary, but even that's not 100%. Language is always fluid. It's always changing and moving. We add words to our vocabulary like social distancing all the time. And like I was just making fun of the word literally. Literally has the opposite usage of what it literally means to use the word literally. And that drives us nuts, doesn't it? So even asking the question, is the Bible true? Seems like the simplest thing we could ask, but actually it's very much a loaded question and not a good question. Is the Bible does it have veracity? Meaning, is it historically verifiable? No. But that doesn't mean that it's not truth-bearing. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that it's not true in a deeper sense of what true is. The Bible speaks to the truth of the relationship between God and human, God and people, God and God's creation, and the constant seeking of reconciliation between God and God's people. And that is incredibly true. Love is incredibly true. People who tell me that they don't believe in God, I ask them if they believe in love. Because love isn't historically verifiable or scientifically proven and never will be, can't be. And yet we live our lives by love more than anything else. We live in covenant with each other, covenants that we break, and we have to continue to start over. But we exist, and that means that God is at work. And the story of God and God's love shows up in the Bible. So is the Bible true? Yes and no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you also said in there that you wouldn't ask is this library true?
Right, when you would walk into a library and say, excuse me, is this library true?
Yeah,
the librarian would say, well, are you trying to talk about the history, or are you trying to talk about the fiction section?
Yeah, what genre? Yeah, exactly.
Right. But couldn't we say, even in the fiction section of a library, is truth-bearing, mm-hmm. right? Harry Potter is not trying to be true. And yet, it's, other than the Bible, the best-selling series of books of all time, because they're incredibly truth-bearing. Love is the strongest force in the universe, runs on every page of Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. The idea that you would sacrifice your life for your friends is very familiar to the most popular book of all time. So absolutely, asking the question, is this library true, seems like a weird question.
Yeah. I have a question from Virginia here, and she asks,
Hi, Virginia.
What is a good translation to use? What do you suggest?
Right. I'm going to give you 3. If you want a study Bible and you want to translate things word for word or as close as we can get, it's never an equal, the NRSV is the best thing going. The New Revised Standard Version is the version that we used in seminary. You went to a Baptist school, and what did you use?
NRSV.
NRSV. I don't know if I can say every. I will say.
I had a Lutheran Bible teacher, though.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Every school that I would consider accredited reads from the NRSV. If you get a study Bible, like the Lutheran Study Bible, which is the light blue one, it's NRSV. If you get the red Oxford Annotated, that's my absolutely favorite Bible. In seminary, that's what we bought because that's what we use. Is that we all used this red, and it's edited by Michael Coogan, who's a cool guy. And I bought the paperback version in seminary because I was poor and cheap. And I so wish I had bought the hardback version because mine is beat up because it's been lugged around to all of those classes and all of the different places. So NRSV, that's number one. That's king, if you will. The Message, if you're not trying to have scholarship, but you want to engage Scripture probably in a new way, if you want to get closer to not the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, the Message is the most readable, it's the most reader-friendly. And Heidi and I have been having this discussion for a few years now about what's better to give our youth when they're confirmed. Should we give them the NRSV, which is the college version? But just because you're in college doesn't mean that you have a college-level understanding of Scripture. And that's the hard part, right? Are they smart enough? Yes. But have they really formulated things enough to get there? The message might be the better option for confirmands and for lay people who aren't. Virginia, I know, can handle an NRSV for sure. But if you just want some daily reading, if what you really want to do is just open the page and point, I would get the message.
Okay.
And then the third one is the NIV. The NIV does a really good job of blending those two, of going from like, okay, here's the letter and here's the meaning. So they lean more, so if the spectrum is, we're going to translate every word verbatim, word for word, and the other one is, oh, it's just beautiful language, let's just make it beautiful, right? The NRSV is very much over here, and the message is very much over here in the meaning, sort of the beautifulness of it, and the NIV is sort of in the middle. If you go to a website or something like that, they almost always quote NIV because it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
But the bad thing is it's in the middle, right? It's not great at anything.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I really like this question from Pam. How can you avoid reading into the Bible what you want to read into the Bible?
How can you avoid reading into the Bible? Hi, Pam. Well, I think accountability is a really strong thing about reading the Bible, like all things. One of maybe the goal of Christianity is that you further your understanding of God in a way that makes you better, that you strengthen your faith, and that you strengthen the way that you work in the world. And there are a lot of people who claim to be working on themselves but don't have accountability. And without accountability, you are not working on the whole thing. There's this whole thing about people who are changing their diet, right, and losing weight, and diet studies. You know the number one thing that will discredit your diet study is if people self-report their own weight loss, because people will always self-report their own weight loss to the lie, right? We do not. I weigh myself in the morning and only in the morning, right? We are not good at being our own accountability partner. And if you're reading Scripture and you're like, see, this is reinforcing everything that I think, you need to talk to somebody who is more objective than you are or sees it on a different point. You're never going to get to the perfect, true end of what it means, but having accountability partners could go a long way.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we do is we have a text study group with other pastors every week, so that helps us to kind of see different perspectives of the lectionary readings. And also, I think the lectionary helps us with this too, because I know in some denominations, the pastor just preaches on whatever on a Sunday morning, but we have something that's been laid out for us, been prayed over, been established long before, and we're given these texts. And so it's much harder to speak what you want to speak into a situation when you're given a text and really we're kind of asked, what is God saying about this?
Well, one of the things I loved and still love from talking to you, when you were in seminary and we would talk, I would say, like, what are you learning now? And you learned things differently than I did, which made me feel old, even though it hadn't been that long since I'd been in seminary. But you taught me to not say the blind man, but the man born blind, right? Because he's a person first language. He's not defined by his ability or his disability, right? And they didn't teach that when I went through. And now Justin's in seminary, and we're learning those things. And when we get together for text study, and you bring in feminist critique, and then Pastor Margaret's there, and she shows it to us from a womanist or a black historical perspective, it makes us stronger because we see it as much more three-dimensional. And the Bible it can be an ink blot test for so many things because you pick up on what you want to do and what you want to see. And it's always great to run that by other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Stan asks, where should someone begin reading the Bible? Should they start at Genesis at the very beginning? Should they start with the Gospels?
Tambourine Stan, hey man. This is an opinion. This is a very strong opinion, but it's an opinion nonetheless. The Gospels are the thing you should read 3 times more than everything else in the Bible. The things that Jesus says, the things that Jesus does, the ways that Jesus interacts with the law, those things are 3 times more important, if not more. I think you should, if you only have time to read something, I would read the Gospels over and over again. Those are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Also, I would read Luke and John more than I read Matthew and Mark, because Luke and John are a little bit more timeless. They speak to us in a way. Matthew and Mark were so pointed to their audience and their time. They couldn't conceive of the New World or America or anything like that. I would read the Gospels over and over and over again. In my Bible study, we've done Luke, and we've done Genesis, and we've done Exodus, and this year we're going to do Corinthians, and next year we're going to do John. And after that, we might just start over, because those are the most important books. We might do Romans after that too. There are some books, this is a strong opinion, but some books are way better to read than others. Things like Job are not worth the time that you would spend reading them. You get the story of Job, you sort of already get it. Maybe you could skim over it, but you can get lost in chapters and chapters and chapters of what's happening in the middle. If you're going to read the beginning and the end. If you're going to start reading the Bible, I would start with Luke. But I'm sure you have an opinion. What's your thought about how you would read the Bible?
Yeah, I think I would start with the Gospels as well. Yeah. And I really like the prophets too, I think. But with the historical context, it helps with that a lot.
I love Jeremiah and Isaiah. Are there minor prophets that you'd give a shout out to?
Amos and Micah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
you're justice ones.
You're very justice oriented. Yeah. Let justice roll down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan and Dawn ask, how should we approach reading books in the Catholic Bible, but books that aren't in ours but are in the Catholic Bible, so apocryphal books?
Well, congratulations, Dan and Dawn. You have a bigger library than the rest of us. You probably have a better library. The church in the Council of Nicaea in 333 wanted to make you believe that every book in the Bible was history or something, so they cut out things that didn't fit their idea of what the Bible ought to be. But in a Catholic Bible where you have the Apocrypha also, you've got a bigger library. I think you should wonder why they were cut out, right? They might be a little off topic, a little off brand, off message, we might want to say, but they're super cool. And actually in my Bible, in the NRSV, the red one, the Apocrypha's in there.
Yeah.
Because those stories are really great.
And I added the word apocrypha to that question. So apocrypha just means hidden texts.
Yeah, hidden text, bonus footage.
Yes.
of the Bible. And in it, a lot of it repeats, like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Esdras are also in the Bible in other ways, except for one great story that's in like 3rd Esdras about how the wife of the king is the most important person in the entire kingdom because she can get the king to do anything and no one else can. So like that's gold, right? There's such great stories. And Bel the dragon. I mean, I mourn that those texts aren't in there because people hid them for fear.
Yeah.
For fear that we might lose our faith if we had to stop believing in a literal creation in 7 days.
There's also the Gospel of Mary and the Gospel of Thomas, which we only have fragments of because
Gospel of Peter.
Yeah, because they were destroyed for whatever reason. People in power during the time didn't like what they said, so tried to destroy them. And we have some pieces of them that have been recovered, but they weren't mass produced like our Gospels were. So they're even more hidden in that way.
Those are called the Gnostic Gospels, Gnostic, and I reference when I do my research to write a sermon. I look at those also. Do you? There's a website which I can't remember now, but if you type in Gnostic Gospels interlinear means that they show side by side. So there are some things, let's say Mary being the first person at the tomb. That's in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John don't always have the same story or the same parable or the same miracle that happened. But when they do, and you search interlinear, you can find them in parallel. So it'll show up, and the Gospel of Thomas, which is the most complete of them, will show up there too. So Thomas will have it written down. And like you said, just because they were destroyed doesn't mean that they weren't just as good. That meant that they challenged somebody's assumptions, and that's why they were taken out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're bumping up against time, but I have one last question that I want to ask you. And I think it's relevant to the time we're in right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. And in your YouTube video, you say that everything starts with the remnant story. Everything starts with Exodus. So what does it mean to have a God who wants us to be free? And what does it mean to be rooted in this remnant story of Exodus, especially in a time like right now when we are literally in Exodus from one another?
Yeah. Well, in God's Kairos timing, this COVID-19 came right as Lent started in America. And I just can't stop laughing about that, right? I've seen so much on Facebook and stuff where people go, I didn't expect to give up this much for Lent this year. But the Lenten story is the Exodus story. Jesus in the desert for 40 days is to remind us of the Hebrew people wandering for 40 years. And we are wanderers. We are, as a people, we are nomads who pretend like we can put down roots, you know. We are followers and not the leaders that we claim to be. And what the Israelites found in the desert is that God will always lead the way if we look for the signs of how to follow God. A pillar of fire by day, or a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. Even in our darkest moments, even when it feels like we are wandering, that's when we look up. That's when we find God. I always feel like God's leading us somewhere. And the prayer that we say in Lent, you know, we go out in adventures of which we cannot see the ending, through paths untrodden, through perils unknown. We go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. And that's just such a good reminder. We are the Exodus people. That story of liberation from slavery into freedom, and then as soon as they become free, they complain that they had it better when they were slaves, right? It's so classic. It's so classic. I'm so happy that for all the wrong things that white people brought to the world in trying to explain to the world to live our way, that somehow the gospel still grew there, that story of liberation became a story of liberation for minorities and for people who were enslaved all over the world. And it's still the thing that makes us free. If we complain less, we might appreciate being in the wilderness even more.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you all for joining us in the wilderness of this virtual Sunday school class. We're trying to figure it out as we go, so we'd love your feedback about what you thought about this. Thank you for those who submitted questions, and thank you, Pastor Daniel, for your comments.
No, this is so much fun. I mean, it'd be better to do it in person, but I appreciate being here and sharing the stage with you, Athena. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace,
Thank you
y'all.
all.